This is Democracy Watch. So, Mark, we've got some breaking news in the most important state for new maps in this cycle, and that's New York, where new maps could mean as many as 6 more House seats for Democrats. So, we now have a decision from the state's highest court. Can you explain what happened?
Yeah, breaking news. The New York State's highest court, the Court of Appeals, just issued a decision ordering the Independent Redistricting Commission to reconvene and submit new maps to the legislature. Hope is on the way. Relief is on the way. We're going to have new maps in time for 2024.
Now, could this issue be litigated any further, or is this now binding? Is this the end of the road?
This is done. Put a period at the end of the sentence. This is it. This is a matter of state law, the state constitution, state's highest court has ruled on it. And we are going to see some very, very significant changes. If you go to democracydocket.com right now, you can read about this opinion, you can read all the alerts about it, and you can read the decision itself. But this is phenomenal news, but this is the end of the road.
No, call me a cynic here. How could Republicans delay, and is there any chance that they could delay it past 2024?
No, there isn't. I mean, there just isn't any run. They have no more runway. This is not a federal court where they can go back to try to get something sent back to a lower court and try to get this or that. Like, this is the end of the road. Also, the other thing is, remember, New York has relatively late congressional deadlines. And I know this is very confusing for people, but sometimes you ask me a question and you're like, will this get resolved for 2024? And I'll say yes. And sometimes you'll say, and I'll say no. And people scratch their head. I don't understand how that can be. Part of it is where it stands in the court, like what level of the court, but also where does it stand? When does the state have its primary elections? When do you have to qualify candidates? And so the good news for New Yorkers, and I would just correct by the way, since I know you're in California, everything in New York is the most important state. As a born and raised New Yorker. But the fact is that New York has late primaries, so there's plenty of time to get this implemented for 2024.
Well, you're not going to see me push back because I come from a long line of New Yorkers, so I may live in California for the weather, but I have some deep roots in New York, so we're kindred spirits here. Mark,
right.
Talk about what a new,
even though you got palm trees,
even though I got
like,
palm
no,
trees,
palm trees, no snow.
Like I said, I'd rather have California weather than New York weather any day, but deep down I still have a love for bagels and good pizza. Mark, talk about what a new map could mean for Democrats on a good night versus a mediocre night versus a bad night with new maps in place.
Okay, let's start with a good night. I like the way you think. So on a good night, I think it means that a redraw, when they redraw this map, when the new map is put in place, and we don't know what the details will be, obviously, because this just happened, and now there has to be a process where the bipartisan Independent Redistricting Commission does their work. So there's a lot of, chutes and ladders here, but I think it's widely expected that what will happen is that the new map will create as many as six districts that will now lean Democratic. So it will be a +6 in a good night for Democrats. In a bad night for Democrats, I think most people think that it will have that of those 6, at least 4 of them will likely be reasonably likely to produce a Democratic outcome, even against a headwind. Now, there's always this tsunami that you have where you fall below that. But in a presidential year, I think it's fair to say and the reason why I say that in presidential year, the turnout tends to be higher. So you don't get as much, oddity of wave based on turnout. I think we're looking at a 4 to 6 seat range is probably where we are.
To that exact point, can you talk about the danger of complacency and not turning out in what is otherwise a safe blue state like New York?
Yeah, so look, I've gotten a lot of praise and a lot of heat about this, where I've posted on Twitter and X or whatever the hell it is, and Threads and 9 other now social media platforms. I wrote about I added this. I had this in a piece I wrote for Democracy Docket that people need to wake up to the threat we've got. We've got a threat of an authoritarian coming our way, and people need to be registered to vote, and they need to vote. If we have complacency in a place like New York, it's not going to threaten Joe Biden's reelection. He's going to win New York, but it's going to threaten these down ballot races. So, we need people to be registered to vote. We need people to vote. We need people to vote Democratic, up and down the ballot. And whatever disputes you may have, whatever disappointments you may have, if you think voting for a Green Party candidate is doing anything other than helping Donald Trump and Speaker Mike Johnson, you're wrong. So we need people to just, get themselves in the mindset that come November in New York and around the country, they need to vote Democratic.
And by the way, that was an excellent piece in Democracy Docket. If you haven't read it yet, I'll put the link right here on the screen. So definitely check that out. And you can also sign up for Democracy Docket. It's the free news outlet Marc founded to focus on everything voting and elections. Again, the link is on the screen. It's also in the post description of this video. Marc, when can we expect that these new maps by the Independent Redistricting Commission will be complete?
So look, it's a good question. I think if you put a gun to my head, I say it will be relatively quickly. I think that we're talking about a matter of a few weeks. New York's a big state. It requires obviously a little more work than, for example, a state, with 5 congressional districts. And as you know, since you were bragging about the bagels and the pizza, don't forget the locks on your bagels.
Right.
You got to get locks on those bagels. You probably don't even have locks in California.
Well, we're pretty close to the beach out here. We have I don't know how far it gets from the Pacific Ocean to turn into locks, but yeah, we made their way out.
But I think that they'll move. I think that they'll move quickly. I think it's now settled that we need these new maps, but whether it takes 5 days or 5 weeks, one way or another, the help is on the way, and we're going to have new maps in time for 2024. That I can promise you.
Okay, great. No, this isn't the only news for New York's congressional delegation. Now that disgraced former Representative George Santos has taken his talents to Cameo, New Yorkers in Long Island, in his district in Long Island, will vote in a special election to replace him in just a few weeks. Can you talk about how that election is shaping up?
I'm waiting for you to get your Cameo with Santos. I think it would be great if you did one.
Maybe me and the Democracy Docket team will get you one for the holidays.
Oh, that'd be something, right?
Yeah.
So, look, that district in New York, which is on Long Island, is a swing district. It's a swing district. But I think that what we're going to see in the special election is the Democrats going to win that seat for a few reasons. The first is just candidate equality. The fact is the Republican Party has been at war with itself. There are going to be people running in the Republican primary, on the Republican side that range from people who support Santos and the insurrectionists, to people who will try to pretend that they're more moderate. And I think you're going to see Democrats much, much more coalesced around a sensible candidate. And I think that there is also just a lot of fatigue on Long Island about the Republicans and the absolute, it's not just Santos, but it's Trump. That is a suburban district. It's the kind of district that, really just does wants government to work. It may want lower taxes, but it wants government to work. And a combination of what they've had with Santos and, of course, the whole jokesters that they have running the House right now, by Republicans, and then Donald Trump will hang over that. I think that's going to be a Democratic pickup. And I think Republicans, by the way, think it's going to be a Democratic pickup.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so I think between the George Santos flip, the possible flip in George Santos's seat, and 6 possible new flips in New York when new maps are redrawn, I mean, there's from today, we can be looking at 7 more Democratic representatives from New York than we have right now. So that's good news on the horizon. Of course, you can follow along with all of that, as I mentioned before, in Democracy Docket. If you're not yet signed up, the link is on this screen. It's also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.